our message on the Facebook page about who we were, what we were doing, what we would and would not tolerate on our page. And people would come on and be like, this is such a bad event because dressing like a slut is stupid. And you're like, oh my god. And like hours working on this page, and you're like, okay, this is not the place where people are like, tell me more. You're like, I'm angry. So it was good to show, I was actually talking to somebody about this week, is, you know, the number of likes you get really in like the digital age really gives you an air of legitimacy, and so if you don't have several thousand people liking you, it's really hard to convince a community that like what you're doing is legit. So Facebook gave us some legitimacy, but it was our website and specifically the 1,000 Story campaign that really created our narrative and allowed us to rise over the counter narrative that the mainstream media was offering.
I think, I mean, our Facebook community became the way that we were able to continue that conversation. But really, I think that Twitter was much more important for us, and especially in light of the fact that, yeah, Facebook is used as this place for people to, you know, anonymously or semi-anonymously really just say whatever they want. And a lot of times it comes off as just a lot, you know, there's hateful stuff, there's just a lot of anger and frustration, and it's sort of this weird, like, the childish core of every human just coming out onto the screen, you know? But, so, we were starting to get really bogged down in a lot of that as the community grew. We had a couple of notable trolls that we were trying to, you know, we were wrestling with the idea, all right, do we ban this person from the page? Do we even respond to what they're doing? And what we ended up doing was just not, because you can really get bogged down in that sort of thing, and it becomes really circular. And as much as you present somebody with facts and logic, it's their choice whether or not they want to participate in those facts and that logic. So we started to focus on Twitter as a way to move that message more quickly and move it without that, I guess, that wasteful dialogue, that wasteful aspect of Facebook. Because in 140 characters, you can't say, I hate these dudes and this is why. You just have to say, this is stupid or this is fine, you know, but most of the time, it's just an announce. So it's just like, all right, I was at this link, here it is, it's shortened, you can't even read it, you know, just go, and then you go to it, and then it begins the sort of snowball of information. So it's, you go to the site, then you go to the news article, then you go back to the Facebook, then you go back to the Twitter. But the Twitter is a less, douchey? But, yeah, it's certainly, but it's also a less loaded way to make those communications, because you don't have that lengthy feed of stuff that you're wading through. It's just one piece of information quickly.
Our most important tool was our website, and mostly the online advocacy database, like our email list. And so all of our other things, so Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and our media communications was about driving, building a list, which we would get to people to take action. So like the action email thing was really important. And I think it's interesting hearing your guys' comments on Facebook, because we actually use Facebook a lot to refine our messaging. So like our messaging around the omnibus crime bill was actually developed over about a 60% conversation on Facebook around like asking a question about what you thought about things and then people being like, no, you should frame it like this. So it's actually been really helpful, but maybe we should have a better community. But that's like personal pages too.
Yeah, I mean, what was the actual kind of, you know, was it your wall, or was it a group or a page, or what was the conversation?
A lot of it's like posing questions. So using Facebook to engage in a purposeful dialogue where you're like asking a question like, what kind of framing do you think would work around this? Because then instead of like, you're inviting that commentary, and like it can kind of go out of hand sometimes, like with people kind of going back and forth. Like I think that's where you get a lot of the conflict. But it's been really interesting seeing that kind of, and I think it's a lot of the way around we're built around being like participatory, that people are just kind of used to being able to tell us what they think. So they do that all the time, and it's actually been kind of useful for us, like not saying really horrible things on our email list, testing it out on Facebook first.
Interesting, okay. Okay, how about another question from the folks out there? You want to?
Sure.
Say your name.
My name's Darren. So I want to say that dirty word of brand again. Two of the projects up here have like a provocative term in the title. And you know, that's interesting to me because it's obviously your programs are polarizing or your campaigns are polarizing, but the language may be polarizing as well. Did you worry about that? Do you just view it as a strategy for accessing young people who would be naturally more comfortable with that language? Would you ever back away from it? Do you have any regrets in retrospect calling it what you did? These sorts of things.
Well, I mean, it was something that we sort of wrestled with. The model we were working with, I don't know if you've seen it, but there was an American website called What the Fuck Has Obama Done So Far? Which is not quite as catchy. I mean, it's it's a little long. I mean, we sort of dissected that site, and we decided that the title had a lot of potential, and we wanted to go with something that was going to make people raise an eyebrow and make that move to share this. And the idea of because I mean, we've come under heavy criticism for that too. It's like, this is a gimmick, you guys are, you know, whatever, a joke. But the fact of the matter is that it provoked people, and it provoked people to share, which was the absolute most important part of the campaign. You know, it wasn't groundbreaking research, it wasn't any of those things. This is all news articles that are in existence already. It was the fact that we were spreading this as fast as possible to get people involved. So, would we do it again? Probably not for a while, just because we don't want to be known as the swear word guys. But I mean, it's something that I certainly don't regret. It was, yeah, it is what it is. I mean, there was. You can criticize it.
Super quick follow-up. Would it be, how much less effective would it have been if it was called Stuff Harper Did?
You should talk about the grandparents campaign.
Yeah, well, we had we bought the domain Rubbish Harper Did.
Oh yeah.
Because we were catching a lot of emails from older people that were saying, this is like, what is the point of this?
Right, yeah.
But I mean,
that was hilarious. Like
well, it just resolved back to
your
shit.
grandparents. I know, but it was funny.
They got mad at us about that too. They're like, "Yeah, this is a bait and switch. What are you talking about?" But I mean, so we were forced to sort of address that. But I mean, you know, part of the campaign was we're trying to make people laugh, but we're also trying to treat these people as the adults that we see them as. And it's a swear word, but it's not the end of the world, you know. So just deal with it. It's the word shit, and you know, it's fine. And he's doing a lot of shit. So, yeah.
It's an interesting question for SlutWalk Vancouver because we didn't come up with the name, and when we were initially starting our organizing, a friend of mine was visiting, and I really had to seek counsel because I was concerned about being seen as choosing something that was shocking. But the original SlutWalk was a response by people in a community who identified as individuals who had been labeled as slut, who had been shamed as slut, who had been deemed as less worthy of respect and protection because they were perceived as sluts. So it was very much a response to that police officer's statement. The reason why we decided to run with it is we thought that there was power in unity, but as Josh used to say when we would be in interviews, because it would come up that the name was very shocking. He would say that if you're offended by the name, like, you ought to be offended by the name. It's offensive that this is acceptable. It's offensive that we never name it. It's offensive that we know that this is what girls call each other in school, and it's never addressed in a meaningful way. It's offensive that when a woman is attacked, we immediately ask, what was she doing? Like, why was this happening? And slut is this thing that sits in the shadows, and we never name it. And we at some point have to bring it out, and we need to stop driving around the issue and talking about ending violence against women, and actually get to the core of it. And what it is it's calling women sluts. And it is the victim blaming that excuses away acts of violence and thereby creates the conditions for violence to continue happening.
I just got chills. That was very well said.
It may or may not have been from our media background. We spent a lot of time on that.
That's good media framing.
Go
go ahead, do you want to say?
Oh no, just congratulating her on the media
Oh,
messaging.
Absolutely.
Good message, folks.
You know what would be nice too, Katie, would be just to, why don't you identify the folks that you're talking about that are in the room, and maybe we could just see who they are. You wanna
Josh
stand up?
unfortunately left. Josh is running the media fair upstairs. He's got blonde hair to about here and glasses. He's wearing a black sweater. Katie Norgren was my technical assistant, and Sarah Bush was our bus stopper for the day. Josh's brother Bryce, who's sitting behind Sarah, was also the guarder of the technical equipment on the day of. It was, yeah, so I'm really happy to see them here. And if you guys have anything to add, please feel free.
And Tria, you said somebody else from your team was here? No? No? Okay.
They're around.
They're around.
They went to the politics panel.
Okay.
We're covering our bases so we can ask the politicians hard questions.
And Cam? Is
Nope,
anyone?
just me.
Okay.
Both of the other ones are in New York.
Jealous.
Yeah, Sean's handling coordination for Occupy right now. I don't know if anybody saw the like Toreador stunt on the Wall Street Bull. Anyway, he's working with the Yes Men, and that was the first project they did, but you can check it. It was on the news yesterday, but they sent a couple of rodeo clowns and a toreador to go and fight the bull, and they were arrested and beat up a little bit by the cops.
How can you beat up a clown? That just seems so wrong.
That's what you want.
Okay, well, let's get back to a question here, you know, around the humor. Actually, you know what, I'm actually going to ask about the kind of speed and kind of velocity of things. I think all three of you have talked about how quickly the campaigns caught, and then suddenly from one moment, you know, to the next, everything had changed. Can you talk a little bit about, like, you know, what's your sort of feeling about how that propelled your campaign, and maybe as well, what does that say about the kinds of campaigns that are successful?
I think this goes into a very basic model of movement change theory. It's about having waves and moments that you can have that you have the opportunity to respond to. And in a lot of cases, there's organizing that's been happening for a really long time, and then there's just that moment where everything kind of aligns, like right now with Occupy. And a lot of it is anticipating that, but it's also having infrastructure in place that will make it easy to respond to that. So a lot of us who do activism work do that within specific networks of people who we can kind of bring together on issues. And doing that online makes things really easy now too, because you can have those kind of communities of organizing that don't have geographical boundaries. So I think in a lot of cases, with Lead Now, we've really seen the kind of people who've worked together for a long time on these things being able to kind of suddenly be there when shit goes down that you need to respond to. So I think it's like, it's going to constantly happen with a lot of these campaigns. Like, you don't really know what's going to happen, but you got to be ready to respond. And like, we don't know when the revolution's going to happen, but it's going to. We're going to be ready. Yeah.
Definitely. I think the first feeling of that sort of change for us happened, I guess, after the first time the site went down. So we were up at about 3 in the morning on Wednesday, the 12th of April, and by noon we had crashed. And we were now under an intense amount of pressure to get the site back up and get it up as soon as possible. But what also happened was that it became real that a lot of people were paying attention. And what happened at that point was this sort of profound sense of, number one, you know, it was really euphoric, it was great, but it was also, it was like, oh, I need to be accountable for what we're doing at this point. This is, when we were making it, the stakes were zero. You know, we were just like, okay, well, this will work or it won't. And then it did, and when it does work, it became almost paralyzing immediately, because we're like, oh, we can't screw up. We have to, this is working, but it has to continue to work, and it has to continue to work perfectly. And it was really quite scary. And because one of the original ideas was, all right, we need to keep moving with more content for the site every day. More things, more things, more things, more videos. And once we finished with the initial round of videos, it became almost too much. We're just like, no, this is okay. Like it's like you put together a really fragile model, and you don't want to see it fall down. And it was just a weird feeling overall, and it was something that we had to address and really look at our own ability to be resolute and to trust what it was that we've done, and to trust that we can push forward with it. We can engage when people are beginning to respond to us. We can, and we have to. But that first feeling of fear was really, we spent a whole day just sort of sitting there watching the stats and not really knowing what to do. So I don't know. I guess sticking to it is so important once it begins to roll, and to know that there are a lot of people looking, and to continue on regardless. To know that no matter what, there are going to be people that hate you for what you're doing, and you have to be able to understand that that's going to exist, and you have to go forward despite. But it's tough. Yeah.
I know that for us, as I said, within 5 days we had 1,000 RSVPs on Facebook. Our campaign kind of hit the ground, not even running, but kind of tumbling. Somebody who supported the movement set up a Facebook event, which was not actually our Facebook event, and the messaging was really off base, and immediately people were on the wall being like, what is going on? This is really offensive. And I'm getting all these text messages and phone calls, and I'm trying to get this page taken down that this girl that I've never met before has put up, and just like, it was an awful start to the campaign. And then within a few days, we started getting interview requests, and we were aware that we had the election coming up, and that if we had too strong of a push in April, by May, we wouldn't be able to get press. But it was crazy because we had our first interview, and like we hadn't even figured out our messaging, and Josh and I were sitting there like trying to go back and forth and have this conversation with this radio host, and not let her realize how completely ill-prepared we were. But after that, we decided, okay, we're only doing 2 interviews per week, so that when we needed the media would still want to be there. And I remember this, we started getting a lot of interview requests, and most of the journalists were very respectful of this, because we'd write back and we'd say, look, like, election's about to happen, we can't get buried. So, yeah, we'll be in touch, but we'll be in touch in 3 weeks. And this one journalist wrote back and was like, this is some kind of joke, right? And I was like, no, this is my media campaign. And she was like, you can't control your media campaign. And I was like, oh yes, I can. And I think that really worked to our advantage, because we were able to choose the major stories and who we would go with every week and how we were going to get the biggest presence. But I mean, it was overwhelming. I didn't work for the 6 weeks after SlutWalk. My contract at work ended, and SlutWalk was my full-time job. So kind of going back to the question of funding, these things are definitely possible for a community to run, but I mean, the labor power that's required is daunting at times. So.
Okay, thank you. Let's get another question out there. Okay.